From Cody eyes to your ears, day 2 of mandatory minicamp discussions. And today we talk about the offensive line and how impressive they were on Wednesday, camp battles, and the Malik Collins extension.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Thursday episode of the Locked On Texan podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for everybody who listens and watches the show Monday through Friday. If you are new to the Locked On Texan podcast, be sure to subscribe to the Locked On Texan podcast wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Also, like, subscribe, and comment on YouTube as well. I am your Texans football analyst, John, some sports guy Hickman. And of course, I'm joined by none other than Sports Illustrated's own and the Houston Texans credentialed media member, Cody Davis, here to discuss our day 2 of mandatory mini camps for the Houston Texans. And some of you may be looking at me and saying, why do you have this hat on? Well, it's hot.
Boy,
it is hot in the city of Houston, Cody. And you being out there, man, like, does the Houston Texans have the water sprinting through and forth, or maybe you can get some of that mist on your face and just kind of cool you down? I know they have a lot of access to water, but how has the heat been out there?
Man, it's hot. It's hot. I had to ask one of the PR staff members today. I said, Omar, please tell coach to change the time come the start of training camp. Because last year when we had Lovie Smith, I guess Lovie Smith wanted to beat the heat. Practice used to start at 8 a.m. We all love that because by the time 10 o'clock rolls around, it get extremely hot. We already, doing interviews in the shade, and then we up out of there. But Coach D'Amico Ryans, man, he's starting practice at 10:05. It's 11:15. We just hot. I mean, yeah, they got their water coolers on the side that a lot of us go out there and get, but it's hot out there, man. Oh, my God. And the worst part about it, it's just June.
Get ready for the dog days. Some of our takeaways, Cody, just going through and being able to read and review and speak to you about things that's been going on during practices. CJ Stroud continues to cement himself as this team number 1 quarterback, and Nico Collins continues to prove himself to be this team's number 1 wide receiver. Head coach D'Amico Ryans mentioned that he is not concerned with Houston's current receiver group. He also took the time to call Nico Collins the big guy with the best hands. And so hearing that from your first-year head coach, a guy that will be around for some time, which is something Nico Collins has not had the luxury of. Looking at his head coaching, the head coaches in this past couple of seasons, that's a good thing to hear. During the 2-minute drill, CJ Stroud went 6 for 7, not including the spike that included a touchdown throw to Dalton Schultz on 3rd and 8 with 20 seconds left. Also, I want to continue with saying the connection between Nico Collins and CJ Stroud continues to blossom. Also, the Texans secondary has been playing fast, and their hands have been around the ball a lot.
Yeah, but my biggest takeaway during day 2 of mandatory minicamp has been the good and the bad of the offensive line. And before moving forward, I want you guys to just listen to the exchange between myself and Coach D'Amico Ryans. Early as of right now, but what has been your assessment of the offensive line, especially the right side with the pairing of Shaq Mason and Titus Howard?
Yeah, those guys have done a great job. I think Coach Cole and Coach Schlosser has done a really good job of honing in on the small, fine details and techniques of our offensive linemen. And those guys have really done a great job all camp, right, of perfecting their craft. So, again, it's just a credit to those guys and our coaches for the great job that they've done with them.
Hopefully you guys were able to hear the question that I asked, but I asked Coach D'Amico Ryans, what is his first observations of the Houston Texans offensive line, especially the right side with Titus Howard and Shaq Mason. And I asked him that question because, John, listeners and viewers, the Texans could have one of the best offensive line unit when it comes to their projected starting five. And on yesterday, we had an opportunity to see Laramie Tunsil, Michael Dater, Scott Quisenberry, Shaq Mason, and Titus Howard take the field as the Houston Texans starting five on that offensive line. And yes, all five of those guys look pretty good, especially the combination of Mason and Howard. That might have been my favorite part of the offensive line because they did not give up a sack, nor did they give up a pressure. They spent most of their time guarding Jerry Hughes, Malik Collins, and Will Anderson Jr. Now, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you are putting together a list of, let's say, the top 5, top 6 defensive linemen on this team, I'm pretty sure you're going to have Hughes, Collins, and Anderson in that top 6, correct? My point exactly. So that lets you know how good that pairing of Mason and Howard has been. There were several times where they had Hughes, Collins, and Anderson on their back heels. They did a very good job protecting the quarterback and creating holes for the run. The right side looked good. The left side looked good as well with the pairing of Laramie Tunsil and Michael Dater. We're going to get into that in the second segment because Michael Dater is looking good, which means with the absence of Keon Green, I think it's time to start having just a little bit of a concern. When you take a look at the center position, and John, I think we all can agree that that might have been our biggest cause for concern when you looked at the offensive line unit. Scott Quisenberry looked really good on yesterday. However, I kind of consider him as both the good and the bad of being the best center on yesterday because we all know Scott Quisenberry. I think his number one issue has always been consistency. And maybe, just maybe, if they give him an opportunity to be the official starter from day one, maybe that can help him become more consistent, unlike last year and the year before where, you know, his play was up and down. But on yesterday, he looked really good. Now, the bad, John, I wanna talk to you about this really quick. Going into camp, you mentioned this, that one of your concerns when you looked at this offensive line was the depth. I kind of disagreed a little bit, especially considering that Charlie Heck is going into his third season with the Houston Texans. I just want to come on this show and say I'm sorry. And yes, the Houston Texans definitely need to do something to improve the depth of this offensive line because Charlie Heck, guys, I hate to say it, but he is not the answer. He was terrible on yesterday, backing up Titus Howard at right tackle. As a matter of fact, Will Anderson Jr. had an opportunity to get a couple pressures, and he had an opportunity to record 2 sacks, and all of it came at the hands of Charlie Heck. Another guy that I'm looking at, the backup center position, Jared Patterson. He did not look good. There were several times that Byron Coward, one of the defensive linemen, rushed up the middle consistently to get sacks, to create pressure, and to stop the run. And John, once again, I'm looking at that offensive line, and I'm thinking to myself, the starters looked really good, but we know because of situational purposes, we know due to injury, it's definitely important for the Houston Texans to do something to fix the depth. I do want to mention this, some quick highlights. Yes, CJ Stroud did have a good day on yesterday. However, he did throw his first pick 6. And John, guess who recorded that pick 6? One of your favorite players.
Eric Murray.
Eric Murray. He had an opportunity to record a pick 6. Of course,
the sky is falling.
That was thrown by CJ Stroud. However, one of the best things that I loved about CJ Stroud, right after he made that mistake, he went out and put together his best drive, or one of his best drives of the entire camp. He led the Houston Texans on, I believe it was a 6-play drive, if I'm not mistaken, connecting with Dalton Schultz for an 18-yard touchdown. And John, you just mentioned the secondary looked really good. Darius Finley Jr., this is going to be his year. That's all I got to say.
Really quick, you mentioned Scott Quisenberry, you mentioned Jared Patterson looking at the center position, but as of right now, Juice Scruggs is the center that is officially starting on the depth chart for the Houston Texans, the rookie. How has he been looking for the Texans offensive line?
I do want to mention this. At least on yesterday, I did notice that they was moving Juice around. There were moments where he was taking snaps at center. However, he spent majority of his time on yesterday playing left guard with that second unit. So when you talk about camp battles, maybe that could be something that you can look into. I know on Tuesday he had a pretty solid day, but camp battles, like I just mentioned, that could be something that you can keep your eyes on when you look at Juice, when you look at Scott Quisenberry. But he has been looking good. But outside of that starting five that I just named, and outside of Juice Scruggs, they really need to do something to improve this depth. And hopefully, just hopefully, Keon Green, whether he's starting or whether he's with the reserve unit, he can actually help the depth of the Houston Texans offensive line.
And I would like to remind you guys that Juice Scruggs does have some experience at the guard position. In 2020, 66 snaps at left guard, 68 at right guard. 2021, 685 snaps at right guard. And then last year, where he predominantly played the center position for the Penn State Nittany Lions. Houston does have some versatility across that offensive line, which is something that this organization for a very long time has loved about getting those guys that can swing tackle, play multiple positions. So Juice Scruggs getting it in at multiple positions is not something that I think is a cause of concern. However, I think when camp really rolls around next month, we'll be seeing him as the starter center for this team. Make your way to FanDuel right now because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. With FanDuel, great promotions every day. That's what you're getting. A safe and secure app, and you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on all of the sports action right now than America's #1 sports book. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on today and get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA and the NFL.
Yeah, we'll see where Kenyon is come training camp. It's for Kenyon, he has to be ready to go, and the work that he puts in over the next few weeks, we'll see if he's ready to go out and compete.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this Thursday installment of Locked On Texans. What you guys just heard, Coach D'Amico Ryans was talking about Keon Green and the possibility of him being ready for training camp. John, I know you're going to look at me crazy, but at the same time, you should give me a pass because normally I do not get too caught up in these type of things. However, it's kind of starting to be a cycle when you look at Keon Green because he missed all of voluntary OTAs and mandatory minicamp because he's still recovering from a knee procedure that he went throughout the offseason to clean up something in his knee, and he has missed camp. And John, I'm looking at this from a standpoint that this offseason was very crucial for Keon Green to be healthy so he can work on the struggles that he went through in his rookie season. I'm looking at this from a standpoint that, once again, we're talking about Keon Green and his inability to stay healthy. Remember last year, due to another knee injury, he was kind of limited in mandatory camp and rookie camp last year. In training camp, he was kind of slow to get things going. Then he had a concussion that knocked him out of all of training camp, all of preseason, had to battle through a shoulder injury, and we all know how bad his rookie season was. If he is still dealing with these same injuries, if he is still always in recoveries and missing OTAs and missing mandatory minicamp, I think it's time for us to start being concerned, especially considering that he is going into his second season.
Is it a question of, and I'm not necessarily putting this on you, but I'm just putting it out there because, for one, I want to state that I don't think as of right now there is a real cause for concern. I think there is it's okay to have a thought of, well, you know what's going on with Keon Green, but not a real concern. But are we, at some point, do we start to question his work ethic in terms of fighting back to, stay in shape and do everything that he needs to do to keep his body right? I think that is a fair thought. If people will go against that, I will understand. But when I look at Kenyon Green, man, I think the upside of what this team wants to do is still in his favor, right? Like the addition of Devin Singletary, drafting Juice Scruggs, right? Um, Making sure that this offensive line can be a solid offensive line. And then over and over and over and over again, we've heard it from the skill position guys, we've heard it from the coaches, we've heard it from the offensive linemen. They want to still establish the run. And so when I look at Kenyon Green and his best attribute, that is run blocking. So I think that's playing in his favor. He is trying to recover from the knee injury from this offseason. And that's why I am not too concerned, because that it was an issue that lingered from last offseason. And I think it still lingered throughout the year. So getting that cleaned up was a must from now until July, when training camp really kicks off. I think that there should be a period of he is doing everything in terms of conditioning, in terms of getting his body in order, because it is fair to say that, hey, man, if you don't come out here and perform, this team who just signed Malik Collins to a contract extension, Larry Tunsil, brought in the players, like, can we admit that Houston had a very good offseason in terms of what they have on the roster this year compared to going back to Deshaun Watson's last year? Like, J.J. Watt was still here, but as an overall roster, that roster was pretty bad. So this is probably the best roster we've seen for Houston since DeAndre Hopkins last season against the 24-0 on Kansas City. So I think that this is a team that wants to compete right now. This is a head coach that wants to compete right now. This is a general manager that cannot afford another 3 or 4 win season. So he wants to compete right now. And for Kenyon Green, if you're not coming in and if you are not the best option to do what this team really wants to do, which is run that ball, establish that run, and then whenever they need to throw the ball with the quarterback that they have, protect their quarterback and pass protection, which is the real concern for his game, because that's what he struggled at last year, then we should start looking at, well, you know what? Maybe they made the wrong decision, because this guy, a rookie, is outplaying him right now. And you can understand if Houston says, you know what? Let's put the better guy out there. He is not cutting it right now. And I think a big part of that for Kenyon Green is conditioning.
I think for me, when I consider the fact that he has missed out on OTAs, where he has missed out on mandatory camp, to me, he has lost valuable reps that can help him improve his game. The best example I could give is Will Anderson Jr. I said it on yesterday, and I will say it again. Will Anderson looks very explosive coming off the line of scrimmage. He looked really good on Tuesday, looked really good on Wednesday. However, he struggled when he's going up against Laramie Tunsil and Titus Howard, rightfully so. I think the biggest knock against Will Anderson as of right now is the fact I think he just needs to get a little bit more stronger. I say all that just to say this little month break that the Houston Texans are about to go on heading into training camp, that's going to give him an opportunity to really study what he needs to work on, i.e. strength. And I think we're going to see a better version of Will Anderson once training camp starts. I hate knowing that Kenyon Green does not have that opportunity. I really do. I know he can always go back to his rookie season and say, I could work on this and work on that. But I kind of feel like he's going to be behind the ball in terms of just improving heading into his sophomore year. And I look at a guy like Michael Dater, you talking about camp battle. Look, I think we kind of gave Kenyon Green. Matter of fact, if the season started today, we'll all feel comfortable saying that Kenyon Green should be the starter. But Michael Dater is making it hard to say, you know what? I think Kenyon Green is the automatically starter at left guard, because he had a phenomenal day over the last 2 days. He had one of, if not the best highlight of the entire camp on yesterday. Listen, don't know what got into Laramie Tunsil's head. I don't know if he wasn't just paying attention or what, but there was a defender. I can't remember his name. There was a defender that kind of blew past Laramie Tunsil, and Michael Dater was able to pick up his assignment, his awareness, his strength, him creating holes for Devin Singletary because Damian Pierce was out due to a sickness. Michael Dater is making a strong case as to why he should retain his role as the starter, playing alongside Laramie Tunsil. So, camp battle, second year development, I just don't know at this point in terms of Keon Green. Hopefully, I'm wrong. As of right now, best case scenario, you could utilize him just to improve that depth.
Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Before we close out today's show, we got to highlight Maliek Collins getting his 2-year extension with the Houston Texans worth $23 million with a $10.5 million signing bonus and $20 million guaranteed. In 2 seasons with the Houston Texans, Maliek Collins has had 66 tackles, 18 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, 1 interception, 1 forced fumble, 5 fumble recoveries in 30 games. Collins has been healthy for the Houston Texans. He's been productive, and he's still young, only 28 years old. That contract itself is very team-friendly. Per Texan Cap on Twitter, Collins' new deal has him at $11.5 million APY on new money, which puts him 22nd in APY in terms of inside defensive line players, which does not change or make a huge hit to the cap situation for Houston. I love the deal, honestly. Maliek Collins is a guy that when I talk about best ability is availability, 30 games in 2 seasons, only missed, 3 games total, 3 to 4 games total. And when he is on the field, while the Houston Texans have not been good at stopping the run, when he's on the field, that front four and the Texans alone defensively has been much better. I believe that when he's off the field, the success rate is 57 compared to when he's on the field is 53. So not a huge jump, but not a significant jump, but he makes this team much better on that defensive front when he's on the field in terms of stopping the run. I like the deal, man. I love it. And he's a guy that has been one of Nick Caserio's few wins in terms of free agents so far.
Yeah, I love it too, man. He was actually one of the guys that I was hoping the Houston Texans got an extension before the season. What's that saying, John? I can never remember it. Yesterday's prices isn't today's prices, because I feel that the impact Maliek Collins, the impact he has always had on that front four under former head coach, defensive coordinator Lovie Smith, it was already good, and I feel like it's just going to get better and improve under DeMeco Ryans and Matt Burt this time around. So shout out to Maliek Collins, man. And once again, you got another veteran in the locker room who was already one of the leaders of not just his position group, but the entire team. Has been through some ugly days here in the city of Houston. So another guy that's just going to continue to help the Houston Texans win more games moving forward, but most importantly, build the culture that they want to be known for moving forward.
Thank you guys for checking out today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter as well at Locked On Texans. Give me a follow at John_Hickman12.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody, COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.